recording. So, do you say Stefan? Is that how you say your name?
Um, if I have to do it phonetically in English, I would say stay fun.
And what would you
You gotta
say in
stay
Holland?
fun.
How do you introduce yourself at home?
Um, at home, I would say stay fun.
Okay. And
It's
where and when were you born?
I was born and raised in the Netherlands in a small town called Naarden. I was born in the hospital and have been raised in this lovely home over here where I'm at right now. Um, which is just next to nature. And we used to have a dog. I have two parents um, and a little brother, younger brother, 2 years younger. And I have lived here for the better part of my life
Which
up
was
until I guess I was 24. It's when
where,
I
I
first
mean,
moved
when
out.
were you born? What month and what year?
July 31st, so that's just a month ago.
Happy birthday.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
and what year?
1989.
1989.
That
So
makes me 32 right now.
that makes you a Leo. And
Yeah.
Leo people, my brother was born on July 31st too. And Leo people tend to have leadership roles, kind of a quiet dignity. They don't like people to uh, confront their dignity too much. I don't know. Does any of that describe you?
Well, I think if you have lived and been with a Leo, then yeah, sure, some characteristics will have overlap. Absolutely.
you
Um,
you certainly fit in the leader category.
do I now?
Would you agree with that or not?
It's really interesting to say because at times I do kind of take that role as people are just waiting, mumbling. I'm more like, okay, guys, then let's start with the first thing. Let's go with it. And to the point where sometimes I lose the connection with people around me, that I get way ahead of myself so quickly in taking charge that I forget who I'm leading. So yeah,
Interesting, because
yeah,
you're
I
focused
definitely
on
do.
getting the job done.
Yeah.
Uh, well, let's come back to your leadership. Let's start with your education and career path. What did you study? What have you done for a career?
Yeah. I'll not go too deep in the Dutch education system. However, I learned along the way as I was turning 12, 13, 14 that I wasn't all that great with languages, or so I was made to believe. My grades did not reflect that. However, my English was good, so that went along with it. When it came to a little bit more theoretical topics, where I really had to study hard and learn what's the matter of the subject matter, I didn't quite got that I went about a more practical approach. At the age of 18, I went into vocational education. I finished the degree in marketing communication, and it included a lot of different internships. So right there, I rather do things and learn on the job, and this is something that has really been strong for me because from an early age on, we were together with my brother and my father. We had a paper run, right? So every Thursday, every Friday, we would have two different newspapers, and we would do it every week. And we would religiously save all that money for 4 years to go on a big holiday.
How fun!
Um, yeah, absolutely. So I've got, from a very early age, I got this work ethic going for me that I've held so many different jobs on the side of my studies and also reflected in my approach to education. I needed that practical element there. That only at a later age I got to do a master's degree, which I finished last year. It's been a long run, but it's been a very entertaining one, and also with a lot of work experience right there.
A master's in.
Intercultural management.
What does that
So,
mean exactly? What's the intercultural part of and it's business management?
yeah, so the intercultural is about how do we engage with difference for me. Um, Although that both of us do speak English, there is a lot of difference, whether it is ascribed or perceived or whatnot, which is the intercultural part, and they've delved that into the different topologies of anthropology, sociology, psychology. You can go always there. And the management side is, yes, the business side. They had business subjects in there, which were already very familiar for me. Um, and I focused on intercultural consultancy and training and coaching because that's what I already loved doing at the time.
Kind of as an end note, the Denmark traditionally gets placed near the top of the happiest countries in the world because people have social supports and family ties, and they value hygge, however you say that, where you have cozy time at home. I'm wondering how the Dutch find that they're similar or different in those kind of happiness support systems from the government.
Of course, this depends on which people in the Netherlands you speak to, where, if you would dare segment them in a socio-economical class, they are. Um, I do feel that when I look around in the Netherlands, that the social support system works very well. People that have it typically harder earning money or are unable to work or are single parents, they get the support that they need. Also, this goes for healthcare. We have a subsidy system and support system, and it is mandatory that you have healthcare. And it supports us as much as it can by the national government through funding. I always enjoy it so much when people combine the Netherlands and Denmark in that sense and the happiness factor as well, because I definitely see that in some of the Scandinavian countries, the support system is so strong.
Yeah.
And it's also been taught to me that way, that you may pay a huge amount of taxes, but the moment that you fall off the wagon, they're going to pick you up and put you back on there again. Right? That they're not going to leave a man behind.
And college is free? Is no tuition for university?
Yeah, what I've in the Scandinavian countries, so here speaking about Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and Finland, they are for free. In the Netherlands, it is not.
Oh.
We do have a subsidized system for public university and public education. It is a decreased amount, and it's a steady rate for all years for everybody. It slightly increases every year, of course, inflation, you've got that going on, but it is reasonably affordable in that sense.
Roughly, what would tuition be for a beginning college student, not a graduate student, an undergrad?
Yeah, yeah. So, like I said here, the pay is equal on all these levels, on undergraduate, graduate, and also at master's level. Don't ask me about PhD, don't know that yet. I think it would be about 1,800 to 2,000 a year as
Dollars.
tuition fee
In dollars.
in euros.
In
So that would
euros, okay.
be, yeah, a little over $2,000
A year. Wow.
a year. A year, yeah.
That's amazing.
Hmm.
Um, when you were growing up, what were the messages to you and your brother about what it is to be a man? I'm thinking of some of the men that I've interviewed in the States said around middle school they got a lot of no's. Don't be like a girl. Don't be a crybaby. Don't be weak. And I wonder if you avoided those kind of messages or what you learned from your family and your culture about this is what it takes to be a man.
Yeah. It's really hard to say because I recognize what you're suggesting here right now, that in the American culture, don't be a girl, don't cry, don't do this, don't do that. Um, Not to put myself in the victim position, but more factually speaking, what I remember is that my feminine side was not appreciated. Um, my feminine aspects, the way I was moving, the way I was talking, even still to this day, I pick up the phone with a customer support, and I'm asking for a certain inquiry, and they're like, "Okay, so yes, Miss Van de Van." I'm like, "I'm
Really?
sorry, but I'm Mr. Van de Van." Like I never mention it anymore because it doesn't bother me as much anymore. But I know that in the Dutch language, my tone of voice is a lot softer, a lot gentler, maybe therefore considered more feminine.
Interesting.
Um, yeah, that has been confronting in the past. And when I did not fit into certain categories by fellow teenagers, yeah, I was pushed and pulled across the spectrum. Let's say, um, which was very challenging at the time.
Are you thinking of categories like sexual preference, athletic ability? What kind of categories are you thinking of?
Yeah. Um, uh, Before I turned 16, I was a very shy child. Even though that I am Leo, I have Cancer as a moon. Very emotional, very shy at the time. Um, Shying away from contact with girls and just being very timid. Wants to be the teacher's best student, teacher's pet, you'd say.
Yeah.
Um, And yeah, not all that sportsy. I played some tennis, I played some football, but it just didn't have my interests. It just didn't catch me. Um, I played video games. I did these kinds of things. I watched a lot of movies. And what's remarkable about the Netherlands in Europe is that it's one of the few countries that does not synchronize or dub any products coming in, any movies, any series, any shows and whatnot, that I've been exposed to English language for such a long time and so many different ways of being um, in a community, in a group, in a show, and reflecting on sitcoms and other shows made from around the world. So many things you pick up on. One thing particularly that has come from my family is make sure that you are a gentleman. A gentleman in your behavior, in addressing elderly, in addressing family, in addressing superiors. Um, we have a formal form of you, just like the French have tu
Vous
and vous,
and tu. Yeah.
and we have jij and u. Um, how to say saying sir or speaking with two words. There's even songs about this from my dad's age. Always speak with two words and say u u u. Speaking formally, gentlemen even continued a little further towards how do you engage with the other sex in that sense? How do you engage with women? You know, be polite, be kind. I started ballroom dancing when I was 16, and that's also when I started flourishing as a Leo. Um, Asking a woman to dance was not a problem. I enjoyed dancing so much.
Mm.
that it was common sense, and that at the end of the Saturday afternoon, evening, when we'd have a dance night and we would take the bikes home, because that's what it was. It was 10 minutes of a bike ride. We would drop off the girls first, make sure that they get into the door, into the house, and then cycle on to make sure that they are inside the house. That's something that was taught to me by my dad, by my family. Be a gentleman. Wait for them until they're in the house. And I do this still this day, even with my grandmas, with my aunt, making sure that they're just around the corner, or I see the light going on in the apartment again, and then I drive off with the car or the bike or walk, whatever it is.
Is there the same kind of scorn that boys fear? Don't be like a girl. I mean, you felt it was difficult because you were shy and a little introverted, but that's different than being seen as feminine. I mean, there's really, I think, still this big fear about being perceived as like a girl, which means weak. And I wonder if that's not true in the Netherlands.
I do think that is actually true. Um, because up until my 16th, it was not much and not anything. It was just me being shy and being the easy target in that sense. I didn't stand out. I didn't do anything in particular. I was trying to be the student's pet or the teacher's pet in that sense. And yeah, that perception made me an easy target because I didn't fit into any single group either. But a few people that I would eat my sandwiches with during lunchtime, but I was not even in the class with them. I just managed to kind of get in there because I knew one of the guys, one of the boys at the time. When I turned 16, when I started ballroom dancing myself, I got a lot more, I had a lot more motion going on. Using my hands, using my tone of voice, also crossing my legs at the time. And then the spectrum of sexuality spectrum came out, and that's where they started putting me on being homosexual, um, to the point where I have been doubting myself, and I have sought to explore this um, to many different kinds of confrontations in my life, with myself, with people around me, what they say, what they don't say, even close ones. Having had um, lots of, well, let's not exaggerate, having had girlfriends from my 18th onward in that sense. Even one of the guys that I was dancing with since the beginning, after 7 years, they still said to me, like, well, Stephan, actually, we always thought you were gay. And that's really striking for me, to the point that, well, have you been paying attention to me? I like girls. No, that's it. I like girls.
In the U.S., I'm thinking of the high school cliques are athletes, maybe punks, who wear dark makeup, academics who are called preppies, different music styles. And I wonder if there's those kind of visible cliques when you were in secondary school.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, the group I hung out with during lunchtime was the more casual group. There was nothing really standing out. They're just genuinely nice people. That's who they were. But if I would look at my old pictures back in secondary school, yeah, I did have the emos and the punks. We did have the skaters. They went the same way. Then you got the jocks. Yes, you've got let me just call them the Barbies, the cheerleaders, the Barbies.
Yeah.
Um, Not so much these like super study guys. At a certain point, I did kind of say like, okay, they're nerds. Yeah, that's where they're at as well. And somehow, even though that I don't know, started dressing like that, I was wearing my M&M t-shirt, and I still have this picture with just having a buzz cut at the time. And people are, I always make the huge joke about this, like, hey guys, can you find me on this photo? And nobody can seem to find me. It's like, look at the M&M t-shirt, that's me. Always so desperate trying to fit in the end, no group really, yeah, accepted me as their own in a sense. Eventually, I had most of a clique with the guys in the skater community, the punks, emos. They were kind of okay with me. Not particularly like come over, but more like it's fine, we're okay. Um, but yeah, everything else not so great. I'm very happy for meeting one of my best friends during that time because I dare say we were the odd ducklings, and we really found each other right there. And I'm very happy he's still there with me in my life. But that really helped, having a comrade in that moment.
There's a really interesting book by a woman, American woman named Naomi Way, and she interviewed teenage boys, and what she found is they were really lonely because they had had close buddies like in elementary school, and they hugged and they loved each other, but in adolescence the fear of being perceived as gay made them back off from close friendships, so they're lonely, and that really impacts their relationship with women for the rest of their life when they don't get to have these kind of close friendships. Did you see anything like that? I mean, you kind of implied that there was some of that.
At the time, I was definitely not aware of that. Now that you're suggesting it, I would reflect on it that way as well. Yeah, there was definitely no closeness between guys or between boys.
But there was when
Um,
you were in elementary school, right?
yeah, to some extent, yeah. I had a few friends in the area, and we did hang out quite a lot. I don't know, it was a lot more innocent, but then as you're growing up, you become more aware of like how could this be perceived by the other person, and giving it too much thought, where it was just innocent play. I don't know, like giving each other a punch on the shoulder or just teasing each other that way. But never in a sense like tickling or giving a hug. Never. That just didn't happen.
Mm.
And at a certain point there was the exaggerated uh, uh, how do we put this? I always make the joke about it that it's like a windmill. It keeps on clapping. So you meet each other halfway with a fist like this. You clap, you come close on the shoulders, and then you tap each other a few times on the back.
Oh yeah, that's really
Right?
male. Pat, pat, pat.
Half half. Just it's just like it's a little there, but not really. Okay.
Yeah, I can be close to you,
God
but I'm kind of
forbid.
hitting you too.
Yeah, God forbid that you put the face the same direction. And I don't know, that became a lot more comfortable. Also with this best friend I'm mentioning here right now, we just give each other a man hug. Like we're all the way up close. It's fine. It's good. It's good to see each other. Because we've been through so much. We really care for each other. And in that moment, yeah, I don't know. It's the closest that we can show.
What have you seen in your intercultural work in terms of like if you were advising business people who had women and male employees who were going to go abroad to represent their company? Are there countries that stand out for you that, oh, you really have to be careful to do da 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 if you're a woman in this country or if you're a man in that country?
I I've stood down. I've come down a little bit from this strong cultural differences to the point where I'd like to play into the innocence of the encounter and learning from the encounter. This, as I'm saying, it already sounds like a very Western approach, like accepting that failure is possible and that's okay. Um, yeah, one thing I'd say, like, make sure that as a Dutch person, you don't do three kisses. You maybe do one or two, or just an equal amount. That's something very, very strange for a lot of people that I've encountered.
Because
And
you go cheek, 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 right?
yeah, cheek,
Yeah,
cheek, cheek. But then,
yeah.
which side do you begin? Yeah, which side do you begin? It's different for people in Slovakia as it is for in the Netherlands, and it can be confusing sometimes. Coming back from abroad, and then I encounter some Dutch people, and then it's polite to give three kisses to the women, to the ladies, to the girls, whatever. And you're like, okay, wait, which side do we begin again? Do you give the right cheek or do you turn the right way? Right? Which right is it? And I think for men, it is always safe to reach out with a hand. And for women, I find it hard to say, but wait for it. And wow, it's weird for me saying this even. Wait for the other party to come to you, because that way you can respond to it and not blunder. Let's say you cannot fail right there. And they might not even engage with you. In some places I've seen where the women did not even get a greeting from a man. And like, hello, there's another person standing there. That's the partner of the person you're talking to. They have a value in their lives as well. Um, this kind of acknowledgement that they're there, or the disregard that they're not there.
You know
It's
what? If
confusing.
if I were going to answer that question, it seems to me what an example of a country where it's different is like Japan. The work culture is geared around men's long work hours, hanging out, drinking sake late at night to do business after work, and it's really a male culture. So I don't know how a woman would do business there. I mean, she can't really get drunk with the guys in a bar. I I think it wouldn't. I don't know, but it wouldn't be the same as a man hanging out in the bar. So I don't know how you would be a salesperson there.
Yeah, I wouldn't know either. Um, I think in that sense, I don't know if you want to go a little deeper into that. I have covered some of Japanese culture. It's been one of the places I'd love to go one day. It's not come to that yet. When I imagine a woman drinking in Japan, I have a very twisted image that they would be night workers, to put it politely, or that they have a certain, I don't know how to put this, preference for alcohol, or for danger, for risking themselves or putting themselves out there anyway. This is the image that I'm perceiving of a woman doing business, drinking with the men at night in Japan.
I don't know
I
if
was lis-
China is the same. I I don't know about China. Do you?
um, Interestingly, I've been hearing a lot more stories about some. Right. I only have heard a few stories of a billion of a billion sized population, um, and it was striking to me that there were women that were actually developing pretty solid careers. They were really working women in that sense. Did they have a social life? I've not picked up on this, but I definitely see them working very extensively. Have I seen them in sales? Have I heard about them being in sales? No, I have not. But then again, I've also studied with a few students from China during one of the degrees that I've done, and they were a very interesting bunch. and we were doing finance at the time. Not sure if I remember this correctly, but one of them was even thinking about helping her father run the business in the future, the finance, which may sound weird, may sound new in comparison to the image that we may have of China.
I think that's true in India too. That it's more common for the woman to inherit her father's business, especially if there's not an appropriate son. So, but that's kind of patriarchal in itself. You come in under
Yeah.
your father's coattails. Before we leave adolescence, an issue around the Western world is increasing anxiety and depression. Especially girls are presenting with anxiety, and I wondered if you hear that in the Netherlands, in Europe, are people talking about youth anxiety, mental health issues?
They definitely are.
Oh,
I've had the pleasure of working with the National Youth Council in the Netherlands. They do a lot of different projects. They write projects, request subsidies, and I've seen that they've set up a new project around mental health awareness. And I also see, if I look at my own network, more and more people are jumping on board on this mental health boat, or whatever you want to call it. Also for employees, have I seen it with girls? I have not been in touch with the younger generation for some time, so I cannot say that. I do see that there's a lot more happening.
so people are acknowledging it. Is your guess that it's because there's more mental health problems for young people in such a stressed world, or is it simply that it's more permissible to talk about it and acknowledge it?
I think they support each other, don't they? On the one hand, they see more of these symptoms and therefore maybe start breaking through that. I think if you look at their parents as well, they may come from a generation or a place where talking about emotions, feelings, how one is feeling is already a standard in a way. It has already been practiced in their environment that now supports the younger generation. If I would look at my parents' generation, I don't feel that has been the same at all, if at all practiced.
You didn't talk about it. There was a little bit of stigma attached to a mental health problem.
Um, Sure, to some degree, it always. I think there typically is, and I have felt and perceived that in my environment, to the point where one of my other closest friends went through such problems, and that was also the time that I left the country to search for myself during my adolescence. Mm, there's even there are typically jokes about it, of course, as well. Like have you gone? And even in the Dutch language, there are certain things that are being said, like um, when you act normal, you're crazy enough already. Um, and this word of normality and acting accordingly um, has always been in repeated to me in Dutch society during my adolescence,
Mm.
until I was confronted by the idea, like, well, you've got people that can simply cope accordingly, that may seem normal, but there are certain things within themselves that don't add up as equally as well to be a healthy person in that sense, to have a healthy physique.
Hmm. Um, what do you see in terms of dating practices, like people in their 20s? Because here there's dating apps. Some people just want to, quote, hook up, not looking for any kind of commitment. Um, People are less likely to get married in their 20s than before. More people are living with their home because of the economy. So the dating scene has changed, I would say, in that way. What do you see in your travels in Europe?
Looking at the Netherlands, I definitely see that getting married, getting kids is definitely going towards 30s, if not a little later. I am there myself.
You are married?
Um, no, not
Oh,
yet. Not yet. Um, my brother is. He is 30. He's married for, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to say this, 3 years now. And he's got a lovely son of a year old, and he is absolutely amazing. His wife is an amazing girl as well, and I can call her a very close friend. They've been dating for years, really for years until they got to that point. Um, so yeah, they were in their late 20s when they got married, but still in their 20s. In my environment, looking at my own friends, there are plenty that have not gotten married yet, and they're past their 30s now. If I even look at what's happening on the streets, what's happening around me, I don't always see a wedding ring on hands, if not an engagement ring. Although that's something that is slowly creeping up on my environment in my social environment. The more and more of these things are happening right now.
uh-huh.
In terms of dating practices, it really depends on what kind of a group you belong to. Right? When we come of age around 20, we typically would be studying. We're doing our undergrad or graduate. And there's a lot of different student associations, if not study associations, in the bigger cities. So you'd be connected to fellow students of the around the same age, maybe a little older, maybe a little younger, that do the same studies, that have that same kind of interests, and go for different kinds of events, even a lot of different kinds of parties, and or even traveling. And there's different communities for everybody there to also meet people. And some people meet locally, others meet through dating apps. Um, or just see what's happening at the night that they go out with friends, going out with the boys or going out with girls, and you find somebody interesting across the bar. Um, I dare say that it is common practice that sometimes even the woman comes up to the man to ask, or if not engage, in a conversation or whatever it is that they're looking for.
Mm-hmm. What about your work with teams? I mean, you're a trainer, a coach, a facilitator, specialized in intercultural learning, dialogue facilitation. What does that mean on a practical application? Who do you work with, and what do you teach them?
Just gathering my thoughts here. Um, as a trainer, facilitator, coach, I am use my skills, my abilities in a variety of different areas. In training, I typically would work with young people from volunteering, that are interested in the topic of interculturality, or conflict management. So we're talking here soft skills and interpersonal skills, as well as leadership, team building, conflict, if I've not already said that. And they already have an association with this organization that I am connected to or I get connected to, and provide them with a training on whatever topic that they want to work on. Either that is they have a problem that they need fixing, they want to learn a new skill to cover that, or they want to engage and learn something new, entirely new, more about different cultures or way you can engage with differences. On the other hand, as a coach, worked with different kinds of young people, but also adults that are not sure what they're looking for next, that have either maybe come off of university, they just finished their master's or PhD, or they're at this point in life that they would like to see a change.
Hmm.
There's a lot of them happening, of course, in during your teens and tweens.
Do you think it's fair to say that the main social problem in the Netherlands is immigration and integrating immigrants from the Middle East into Dutch society? Is that a fair statement?
Yes, I would say that that is a main concern for sure. It has caused a lot of friction in the society and in politics as well, in political debates and discussions, to the point where the immigrant has been ostracized so much so far so that they almost look like are portrayed as the devil. Not quite literally as a devil, but the worst of the worst of the worst. This is our anchor and this is making us drown, or they don't belong here, they ought to go. And this has been a political discussion that's been going on for a very, very long time, even during my teen years. So we're talking about easily 15 years that I'm aware of such discussions.
Okay, so if you're working with a group of teens and the school has immigrants who aren't integrated or who are treated poorly, what kind of skills would you teach them in terms of team building, conflict resolution, so they didn't view each other as the enemy?
I think focusing on team activities, something that they cannot do by themselves, that they have to collaborate, that they have to work together, to acknowledge that every person is necessary to deliver something that's bigger than themselves. On your own, you can achieve only thus much, but within a community with people around you that may have different views, there's not one way of completing anything. There is a common sense that it's going a certain way, a certain direction, and this is the cultural common sense. This is how we do it, therefore we do it this way. But when somebody brings in a different common sense, a different mindset, a different approach, that could challenge the status quo in that sense, but it can also make it even better. There's a synergy that can take place if they dare listen and learn from each other. And through experiencing such challenges, such group challenges would be the way I would go about it.
Can you give us an example of something where you've done that, you've applied that principle to a group that got along better as a result of that activity?
Yeah, absolutely. What I enjoy doing is making sure that sometimes talking too much is causing too much friction, so too much tension. Therefore, I ask them to quiet down. Either I would put them in a living knot, so they come together holding hands, and I cross the hands over to another person so that it sort of becomes like a huge knot. And they have to get themselves out accordingly. Sometimes I somehow manage to put a certain person as a key person that is able to see, give that perspective, and suggest like go over in a non-verbal way, expressing themselves, and that really really brings people closer together in the sense that, well, sometimes I don't have the right perspective, or from where I'm standing, I cannot see what's happening.
Mm.
Therefore, having somebody else that's outside or just has a different pair of glasses on, they can give you that added perspective to get to the solution.
A really fun group exercise in terms of gender that I've done is called the Fishbowl, and you have men sit in a circle with women around them, and the men talk to each other like what they would like women to understand about men, as if the women weren't there, and then
Mm-hmm.
the women do it. And like one of the themes that came up was the men said women like nice guys as friends, but not as lovers or romantic partners, and they thought the kind of He-Man kind of guy gets the woman, and they don't want to be like that. They're happy to be nice guys. So that's an interesting group exercise.
Absolutely. I love the fishbowl. It really does bring about very engaging and interesting discussions.
What have you used it for other than gender?
Talking about conflict, different kinds of conflict, different kinds of tension, friction, also different layers within an organization. Taking first tactical level to explain and express like how they engage in a certain problem, how they tackle it, what they follow, what they don't think about, and then asking the next level to come in if we go about that hierarchical chain, and then the next level, and um, how does that trickle down, but also go up the ladder in that sense, and get that the different perspectives right there in one room.
Oh, so the like if we have level one, two, three, four, so ones would talk while the two, three, fours listen, and then twos would talk. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
This is something that I've really been pondering over is every progressive group that I've been involved with, including feminist group, men's groups, they splinter over who's the most pure ideologically. So, like, I'm more feminist than you are, or I'm more for men's rights than you are, or I'm more socialist than you are, or whatever. And I wondered, A, if you see that as a problem in groups you've been with, these factions over political purity, if you know what I mean, and what you found helps them work together, even though I think you're not as pure as me.
That's a very interesting way of going about it, because this purity also brings this sense of I'm gonna just put it out there, racism. I'm purer than you are. I am more knowledgeable than you are. I am at a higher position in this organization than you are. Therefore, you need to listen to me. This sense of position, of control, being and feeling superior, if not special, it is challenging. No matter what group that you have, some show it very quickly, or a certain person shows it very quickly, and that changes the dynamic of a group entirely. I do dare say you cannot take that away, because it is a system on its own, and it works that way. But what you can do right there is let the system reflect on what it is showing, what it is that you're perceiving as a trainer, as a facilitator, as an outsider. Like, hey
Talking about it.
guys, I'm noticing that three of you are mostly talking, and just give them the space to like say, oh yeah, yeah, actually that's true. It's like, how does the rest of the group feel about that? Or how do you feel about that? Do you want to hear from or about somebody else in the group? You know, they can take it, they can leave it. It can move forward the way it was, or they can open up to others. But that also requires a certain, I dare say, vulnerability in opening up. Vulnerability in, I may not know everything. That I may not be the smartest. I may not have the best answer for this. Eventually, I may have to make the decision, but I'd like to also know then what is it that others are thinking. Don't we already do that when we make life decisions? That we ask our friends, we ask our family, we ask for perspectives. Then why don't we do that at work
Mm.
or in other situations?
Mm. What do you hear about feminism in European countries that you know about, and is there a men's movement? I would say in the men's movement in the U.S., the largest branch is peer-led counseling men's groups. So we get together once a week. We have weekend warrior trainings. We talk about our feelings and get permission to be whole human beings. There's a large fathers' rights after divorce group. The, what do you see? Is there a men's movement and or movements? And what do you hear about feminist goals?
I'm very lucky to say that I've learned a lot more about feminism since the first time that it was introduced to me. Um, it's been taught to me that it was a counter male perspective, a counter, not even the counter narrative, just against men,
Anti-male,
anti-male. And
man
that was
haters.
very confusing at the time. I did not engage with this. Funny enough, as well, in the Netherlands, what I typically see happening, speaking from what I know about the Netherlands, is that they're teaching girls to emancipate, yeah, to emancipate themselves, to stand up against boys, to push back, not to always say and accept and follow what the man is saying, but to push back, like, you know, I have something I want, right? Or I don't want this, and saying no, or saying let's do that differently, which sometimes did not always work well, because I've been in situations where girls did push back in that sense, but it felt more aggressive than would be necessary, perhaps. I'll say this, of course, I'm saying this after the fact. And after all these years of having experienced that, I know much better where I can meet people, fellow men and women in that sense. Going from there, um, it's been the attention about feminism, or the things that they raise attention for or focus on, or however you would say that, however you would put that, have become a lot clearer for me about women being considered less than men, women being assaulted, women being assaulted at home, or, and we can think about physical, mental, and sexual, if I dare split those up. But also, what is their place in society? How are they viewed in society? What it is that they are allowed to do or not allowed to do? And in some places, there really is such a suppressive view of oppressive view about what a woman should do, it sometimes even surprises me that in certain communities it's there.
Even in the
That,
Netherlands.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, it's, I find it hard to find examples where a male, or as I perceive as a male, to be speaking on a equal level or speaking equally to a woman. I find it really hard to find examples of this.
So you're saying disrespecting women is still common?
I might, yeah, I,
Hmm.
I just might.
Hmm.
And definitely in certain ways it still is. There's even the practice of whistling on the streets or um, chasing after a girl in a way. I don't know. There's and the accessibility maybe even to prostitutes as well. The sexualization, the objectification of the female body um, is still taking place in the Netherlands. And that may have a certain influence on the perception of boys and men.
Hmm. That women can be sex objects. What about the men's movement? Are there those kind of peer support groups, men's groups happening? Are there men's issues that are discussed?
I've not delved too deep in this myself. I've only recently started looking for this because the only thing, like we said at the beginning, that I picked up on is how to be a gentleman, right? How to treat nicely and equally and be kind, have etiquette, have manners, be proper. But being a man, what does that mean? The only thing I can think about is when the baby comes. That's when a man becomes a father. That is the moment, the catalyzing moment. Um,
Oh, when he
but anything
becomes
else,
really a man, when becomes a father?
yeah, I'm not sure if that would be equal to being a man, but it's a male role being a father, and there are certain instincts that will come up, I believe, uh, when the baby's there.
Hmm.
As
Are there those kind of men's groups, all
yeah, in
male?
terms of main groups, they have been raised at one or two occasions in the last few years, so during my mid 20s and later, that there are women associations, women groups that talk about issues that women face in everyday life. And that, well, yes, there's also like men groups. I remember now, there was this interview of a strong women's right movement feminist, I think, excuse me if I'm wrong, and that was interviewing men and that were in the men's rights movement. And what was astonishing is that this woman that came from a I hate men perspective um, came to a point where, not all men are evil, not all men are bad, and that they face their own issues, not issues about masculine toxicity, being the alpha male, um, abuse, physical abuse by their partner, but also being pressured at work and in other places and environments. I felt at that point like, hey, maybe that's a great place for men to go to, but I never had the need for it myself to this point today where I'm not always able to engage equally with my partner, where I do start asking myself questions, what actually does it mean to be a man, or how can I be a man, my own man, without having to be the alpha male, without having to conform to uh, being fully masculine with muscles and beard and a deep voice and certain challenges that I may have.
When you mention men's rights, what rights are not granted to them, or what rights do they feel are missing?
I think partially due to masculine toxicity, expressing of feelings and having emotions is just no go. This does not happen. A man can be angry, he can be happy, he can be joyful, he can be sad, sure, but more likely he should be angry at the injustice that is caused to him in one way or another. But feeling sad or feeling melancholy, feeling the wide spectrum of feeling is not expected of men to show.
And men are beginning to talk about that.
Definitely.
And
In my own environment, so coming of age there, right? At a later age, yeah, we in my environment we start talking about these kinds of things. Also because I know what kind of people I'm surrounding myself with and by, I probably would not do that with anybody at the gym. Not as likely as I would with close friends, because I've known them for years. I know where they're at, so I can engage in that sense.
are there any national organizations, like there's groups called Everyman or the Mankind Project or National Organization of Men Against Sexism? They're national groups for men's issues. Is there anything like that that you know of?
Not that I know of. I would dare say that they are there. Yeah, there's enough happening in my environment and in certain communities that I'm connected to that it is starting to. It's there. I know it's there. If not, it's so close to being there.
What other languages do you speak besides Dutch and English?
Um, as fluently as I do English and Dutch, none. But following, I would say French and perhaps some German. It's in the back of my mind somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Um, do you, like, I know that you worked with George Simon in France, and I wonder, when you do work with him, and if you guys are looking at gender issues, do you see anything that pops up? Oh, that's different than in the Netherlands, or oh, that's not what I've experienced. I mean, what kind of cultural differences have you seen maybe in France?
Yeah, something that keeps popping up on my own radar about how we engage in relationships. There typically is the acceptance that it is a monogamy. I don't,
Monogamy,
you know
yeah.
what I'm monogamy.
Yeah.
And what I keep picking up on about uh, things happening in France is that to have an affair is something very common, or so it is perceived by me, and I picked this up in French society, and I keep getting more and more examples, not just from celebrities, but also from people that I have met or having stories here and there passed around. Sure, anything can be fabricated, but I do believe that there's some truth to this, even if you look at the cinematography of the French culture. There's many examples of this as well.
And political leaders, where the mistress and the wife both come to the funeral, kind of a thing. That
Yeah,
you don't hear that with Macron. I don't think he's known for having a mistress, right?
no, no, not typically.
The interesting thing about having a mistress is it's the man having the mistress. You never hear about the wife having a lover.
Oh yeah, no, that's something that's undone. That's like it's undone. No,
Not done.
it's not done. It's just not done. Not at all.
But the men are having they're having mistresses who are female, so maybe some of them are married and we just don't know.
Yeah, God forbid that the man finds out and actually starts feeling something.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Huh.
Um, Adultery is yeah, one of the trickier subjects that I've come across, and it's hard to think about it also as a man. You know, what if your partner, or what if whoever you are with is committing adultery? What does that do to you? Like, it turns me upside down with rage and with disappointment and feeling left alone. Right, this is one of my bigger fears, being left alone. Um, that I do everything I possibly can to avoid that feeling, and not always through the right way of expressing that.
Mm.
Again, not knowing how to really express my emotions, not having had that many examples in my environment, in from men around me, from movies, from series, from anything, going through the few different shades that men actually are able to show, being angry, is the way that I deal with that in that moment. Um,
Hmm.
but not to the best end.
May I
That
ask you if
doesn't.
you're in a committed relationship at this point of time?
Yes. Yes, I am.
And you and your partner are monogamous.
Yes, we are. Yeah. Yes, and we've known each other for 6 years, and I'm very happy to have her in my life. Very, very happy. A lot of great things have happened since, and also a lot of rough patches that we've gone through that we've also sort of conquered. But there's more work to do, which is why I also in the future want to continue looking for better examples of how to engage and communicate equally with the my opposites, um, with anybody that I'm engaging with accordingly, respecting certain common sense cultural values that are there, and learning what it means to be my own man,
Mm.
how I can be my own man.
Mm. You mentioned media. I wonder if you saw the Danish TV series Borgen about the woman who's a prime minister.
I know my parents have seen that. I have not.
It's really interesting in terms of all these issues because she's divorced. Has a new man, a partner in her life, and she's judged differently than the men who are politicians.
Hmm.
That's an interesting series in terms of gender roles and power differentials
Yeah,
and that kind of thing.
yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you would like us to think about in terms of how to get along in groups, how to understand the other gender that we haven't talked about?
You know, what's difficult for me is how can you get everybody around the same table? How do you get everybody there for the same topic? Um, for me, simply an invitation would work. For some, a challenge would work better. For others, again, something different. I think that just simply starting that dialogue and then dealing with whatever comes your way in that moment, resistance, tension, or a rush of emotions to flood you, or whatever defense mechanisms may be there, to engage with them continuously, maybe to the point that you get tired out a bit from having to throw your defenses all the time and then showing some vulnerability, to engage in such a sense, or to engage through leading by example, showing vulnerability while you are in a group, whether you have a leadership position or a support position, or whatever your position may be, because there is one. Show what it is that you like to see from others around you. See how they perceive it, how they go about it. Sometimes in a group, you may not get the same responses you would one-on-one. But also know if, I don't know, would you let go of that group if they're not willing to do that at that point? Or would you tirelessly continue working on this until either you get stressed out, burned out, and have no energy anymore, or that they give in, like, okay, you know what? Fine. Take an hour, do your chat, be done with it. Where's that fine line? Where do you meet?
You know what this makes me think of is chimpanzee dominance hierarchies, and there's a great book by France de Waals about chimpanzee politics, and it's so similar to human interactions. You know, I'm going to fluff myself up and look big. I'm going to do favors for people to get power, not necessarily beat them up. It really was striking to me how similar we were to the chimps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I've read about recently as well in a book. I'm gonna have to pick that up in a moment. What that was, they were suggesting that so many things that we do are with our old brain, our instinctual brain,
Reptilian,
of,
yeah.
of having these hierarchies, or having these instinctual ways of connecting with people around us, certain relationships that we have with a parent, a senior, if not a spouse, if not a family member, a brother, or what we typically respond to in times of challenge.
Yeah, right. But then there's the bonobos who we're more related to, who don't have those kind of patriarchal, or, well, they do have matriarchal systems, but they solve everything with sex instead of fighting. So they're closer to us than the chimps.
That's an interesting suggestion.
I was recently at the San Diego Zoo with my grandson, and the first thing I did is went to go look at the bonobos because they're so close to us.
Mm-hmm.
They were most interested in eating at that point, but so they didn't have any conflicts. All right, well, thank you so much. This has been really very informative.